So the way sales organizations work is they've got a TAM, a total available market, and they spend time trying to drag them onto their marketing platform so they can scream in their already deafened ears, "We're here, look at me." And then a minuscule percentage of those get shoved into their selling platform, where some poor feckless SDR goes through the process of doing a demo where they vomit up features and functionality and say, "We do this." And all of this is intended to try and get the prospect into your pipeline. Now, the problem is the majority of those people, because you've touched them at the wrong time, because their buying process is they make space when they realize there is a problem. And they start thinking they're aware, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And so they start moving into passive looking, which means they're trying to learn how to understand what their problem really is and what other people have tried to do about it. They're not ready for a sales conversation at that time, but that's where the majority of your TAM is. And the problem is that if you're trying to sell them at that point, you're going to drive a lot of them away or drive many of them into the arms of the competition. Now, bear in mind, you've probably spent, if you're in the e-commerce world, $92 acquiring a customer for every dollar you spend on converting them. And this is these consultancies data from 2018. I mean, Jace, would you say that's wildly out of whack with what you guys do?
No, I don't think that's wildly out of whack. I think a couple of things that you made me think of. First of all, the demo. I want to jump to your quote unquote "we do this" because that's a huge problem.
Yeah,
is that reps believe a demo is the next step when you've identified a person, or not reps. Companies. Let's just say that. Companies are like, "Hey, sales rep, give them a demo when they get to you," which is not right. Nobody likes a demo. Nobody wants a demo until they're ready to sign a contract, probably. Nobody wants to see a demo. Exactly. And if that's your next step,
the demo is the last
screwed.
Step.
Yeah, exactly.
The demo is the last step. It's not an early step. If you demo early, you're probably going to kill the sale.
Totally. And if it's somebody who just goes, "Give me a demo," they're probably not your customer. So second thing, you talked about passive looking. So, and Pete, you were asking me about spending money. Like that's really where I am most interested in spending money, is how to identify the people who are passively looking.
Welcome to SAASholes. We are revenue ops with an edge. With decades of making interesting decisions, Jamie, Jason, Marcus, and Pete are dedicated to helping aspiring sales leaders accelerate revenues with our no BS approach to sales leadership strategies and tactics. Our show is supported by listeners and viewers just like you. DemandFarm.com. Unlock key account growth with Demand Farm's large deal, key account, and relationship intelligence products. Go to DemandFarm.com now to schedule a demo. Ask for Iron Man. Brent Keltner's Winalytics Revenue Acceleration Playbook Masterclass. In 5 hours over 5 weeks, help your sales and go-to-market team build the mindset and skills for a new buyer environment. Kickoff and product-driven selling versus authentic conversations for all go-to-market teams. Team-level sessions for self-assessment and team dialogue. All go-to-market team wrap-up to identify top go-to-market strategy adjustments. Go to Winalytics.com now. We got some shout-outs to do. Doug Landis, 6 years at Emergence Capital. Our own Jamie Carney, 1 year at People AI. Mario Garcia, 5 years, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Melanie Boatswain, 7 years at Construction Executive. Kyle Singles, graduated from the Texas McComb School of Business. Good for you, Kyle. Brendan Sweeney, old school Brendan. Pop Menu CEO Brendan Sweeney named one of QSR's 21 digital disruptors. Way to go, Sweeney. And we got some happy birthdays. Grace Keegan and Andrew Hill. Another spin around the sun. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, Marcus. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah.
How are you both?
We're doing great. Jason's telling us how he's burning all the sales dollars on wasted marketing.
Exactly. I'm trying to get to it as quickly as I can so it doesn't get cut. So it's the third. I'm already a quarter of the way through.
Well, Marcus, we started out with Jason thinks he has a budget to spend, and he knows it's iffy. So I'm just curious: is it a month to month? Do you have year deals out there, 3-year? Because SaaS companies they try to get you nailed on 3-year deals. They try to do the marketing. Sellers try to nail you down for 3 years. I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't sign up for anything like that. I have one contract that's multi-year right now, and I was surprised that was the case. But that's the only thing. That's the only thing right now. We go quarter to. I mean, I plan for the whole year, but really we assess it, quarter to quarter. I mean, I do planning with my team annually, but then we redo it every quarter, so we are sure of what we've got, what we need to know, and like you can't just take your AdWords or whatever you're doing and like set it up on January 3rd and expect it's going to do a good job for you in April if you don't keep optimizing and touching it. Like that's the thing, Pete. We were talking about demand gen and SDRs. Like the other part, the flip side of the demand gen thing is like optimizing all this work that you're doing. So whatever we're doing today is not necessarily going to look like that in February because you look and see what happens in January and how you can change it and optimize it. And that's really how I go ask for money. I can optimize to this degree, which means I'm going to need more here or less here and move some over.
I'm guessing that the contracts that you signed for multi-year, they're more of an analyzing type business, trying to see what competitors are doing. Like, I don't want you to tell anything out of school here, but
yeah.
I would think you want to know what other companies are spending money on to see if it makes sense for you to do it or fish where they aren't.
Yes. So understanding I'm happy to spend money on anything that helps me understand something I can't see. So who's coming to the site that's not taking an action? Where is there data that I can learn from? How do I get more people and how do I contact more people? Anything like that, I'm happy to spend money on. Now, we're in the e-commerce market. It's really big. So I do care what my competitors are doing, but from where we are, I also know that I've got a really big market to go at and a small share, right? So I know that there's more opportunity out there.
I'm really curious, Dave, how much of the technology and the spend do you know is wasted, but you can't point to exactly where and how?
Well, I don't, I guess until I know that it's wasted, I don't know that it's wasted. So there's got to be a part of it. I mean, I think there's a lot of inefficiency anyway. I'm sure there's inefficiency in how we do AdWords, and that's what we're trying to uncover. I'm sure there's inefficiency in email marketing, but some of that stuff, like we have to pay for a marketing automation system, whether something gets wasted or not. So that's why optimization is so important. It's like, I'm not going to dump my marketing automation system, but I am going to look at the efficiency of what goes through there and the scoring that comes back to see how to make that better every single week or every single month or quarter or whatever.
So this then raises another really interesting question, which is, what is the overall purpose of this combination of technology and data? What are you trying to accomplish for your sales team?
I'm not trying to get them to sell more. I'm trying to get us as a company to drive greater revenue. That's really what I'm trying to do. And so sales is one of our channels. I mean, there's a whole like branding side of this that is important. That's even more nebulous to measure unless you want to spend bazillions of dollars trying to measure your brand. I'm trying to drive revenue is what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Is it drive or control? Like twisting the knob, you want that when you turn that knob, you want something to happen on the other side, I would think. And all tied in ROI. Is that right? Mr. Marcus
Yeah, I mean,
Cauchi?
it's funny because I was looking at my list, and one of the things down here is, I've got 3 words in a row: optimization, data, and sales process. Right. So that is like trying to drive revenue. I'm looking at what are we going to optimize in what we currently do? What's that data tell us? And then do we have a sales process that then takes what's coming into this system and we do something with it? And that's, to me, that's like where going into a new company or working with new salespeople or new marketing people, like that's what you have to understand. Like, do they understand the need for that process so that something that comes in gets dispositioned, gets some sort of action on it? It may not become a deal, but at least I'm learning something from it. Like that's really that's where a lot of the payoff is.
If we're looking at planning, guys, isn't it like let's just say a salesperson is worth 200 grand US a year, and you would only add that, you would spend that 200 grand if you knew that it would provide you more revenue than just doing AdWords and going through e-commerce. You would add a salesperson when you've exhausted the marketing spend. Is that a way to look at things?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you sell, right? So if you don't sell through e-commerce, then you can't. I mean, you have to invest in people. But then, we were getting this conversation about quota over assignment a couple weeks ago. Like, you got to think about that. Think about that, right? Like, how are you managing that sales process, and how are you managing your sales team, and how efficient are they?
Well, take e-commerce out of it and look at the SDRs. If you're going to spend 80 grand for an SDR, then you would spend that 80 grand if you couldn't get the leads coming in from AdWords or another source.
Yeah, assuming your SDR's job is to do outbound dialing and not catch inbound. Yeah.
Right.
So that's another conversation, right? Like, what's the job of the SDR? Catch inbound or do outbound? And can the same person do both? You get one or the other. I mean, that's, that goes round and around and around in every business I've been in.
There's a really awkward question, which I'll save for later if we have time. But my question is this: if we're spending all of this time trying to generate leads, is that the right question? Are we trying to generate leads, or are we trying to engage with our ideal hero customers? And should we be more discerning and work on a smaller list and go deeper and wider within fewer accounts? Even if you're transactional, having the 200 accounts is a hell of a lot to cover. And of those 200, maybe 20, 12, 15 are going to be of any real significance. And you could be spending a huge amount of time on the other 185 for the same return. So
I mean, I think that's what the planning is that we're talking about, right? Who should you be selling to, and what's that size of that market? And then, like, are you actually getting those people to buy from you? Are there more? How do you invest in selling just those people?
Well, the planning's already been done, right? Now we're like, everybody.
It better be.
Well, everybody's straggling in from New Year's Day, hungover. It's going to take them a few days to get going. And then, oh man, our plan's out of whack come, a month from now or mid Q1. And then you gotta make adjustments. There's got to be some questionable things that you knew in your planning. This could be the weak spot, and here are the adjustments that we're going to have to make, because 2023, the small companies took a whack. Now the big companies are going to have to take their whack, right?
This is going to be a very tough year, and people are going to have to start really rethinking how they go to market. Because by and large, most of them are going to market with very selfish sales motions and marketing motions, which means that they touch the customer at the wrong time with the wrong motion.
Well, my reason is people who are passively looking are actually trying to solve a problem or see a problem coming up down the road, or have identified an area of opportunity in their business. And so they're like, let me just go do some research before I have to pitch this to my boss. Or we've discussed it. The three of us have discussed it, and I'm the one who's on the hook to do the research. So I'm going to go out there and look. However I can identify these people is like super important from a marketing perspective.
Right. Okay. So I do have some solutions which we can talk about separately that might be interesting for you to look at.
Yep.
However,
and I get one more. Can I get one more thing?
Yeah, please.
Based on what you said, is one of the reasons why we spend a lot of time talking about scoring of a lead or of a person, because when that person comes out of your total available market into the marketing platform, and we talk to them and say, we're here, this is what we do, first of all, you got to have a pretty diverse set of content that says, you should be asking people to buy all the time, but sometimes you're just going to give them information. But that's why you got to score people in some way that you keep revisiting, so you understand whether they're qualified to do this, whether they want to talk to you or whatever. It's really hard to do if you don't have some sort of scoring system. None of them are perfect, and you have to revisit them constantly to make sure that they're accurate. But that's one way you can help your SDRs and your sellers say, this person's ready or they're not ready, or you can see this person's, the type of person we want to sell to or not. And that scoring system helps with that. And there are lots of products that do that, but we spend a lot of time on that kind of scoring idea.
Well, what we also have to bear in mind is when we're looking at where the buyer's journey, this is Bob Mester's fabulous buyer's journey model. And what's really interesting about this is that the majority of sales activity actually hits buyers in the passive learning stage. However, if we use that and we train our SDRs to recognize the moment is not appropriate to pitch, but it's to engage in a discovery process where we're trying to help them understand and create a pathway to certainty. Because remember, two of the greatest human needs that drive our decision-making behavior are the lack of certainty and looking for certainty. And the second one is the need for significance. Now, if we understand that people also care about making a contribution, they care about making real meaningful change. They care about this is the stuff that they care about. Well, our job in trying to find those people who are passively looking is to turn up at times when they are not ready to buy and add value that is timely and relevant, but not pressured.
Create content that doesn't have a call to action of you got to buy it from us, but create content that is, and we do this in our business now. It's not unusual or unique that we do a webinar, but we do a really consistent webinar series. Number one, that is focused on what are some big problems, and the people on those webinars are our partners and our customers. So it's not us saying, let me give you content that we think is valuable, but really looks like a demo to you. It's actually, let me give you content that is a conversation among people who really have this problem.
Absolutely.
And that's why we do it, because at the end of it, it's like, the call to action at the end of it is, we're doing another webinar next month. If you want to come to that, hey, sign up for that one too. That's the call to action. And then that generates an enormous amount of content that we can use for different stages of the buying cycle once we've done that. So like you get this kind of a tactical look at what you're saying, which is generate some content that really is about the problems of the industry, the problems of the people who are trying to sell, in our case, other e-commerce merchants.
Well, this is really important, because when we understand where the buyer is in their journey as an individual human being, because the company isn't necessarily at any specific stage, the individuals you need to work on, especially with enterprise or more complex sales. Now, when they're in the passive looking stage, your job is to try and learn what their struggling moments are. and what the job they're trying to get done is, and what that individual's role is in executing their part of the job to be done. If you understand that, then it's much, much easier to develop content that is preemptive, because now you can say, Pete, typically you'll see these three things happening, and if they happen, the next follow-on is this and this. If these five things happen, this is when you need to take action. Watch out for this. And when the first trigger happens, okay, they're alerted to it because they've got a bit in their brain called the reticular activating system, which looks for unfinished business and it hates loose ends, which is why in really good storytelling and in NLP, it's called nested loops. You start by building up, and you start with E, then D, then C, then B, then A, and then you collapse A, B, C, D, and E. And that way, what you do is you build this crescendo, and it's all tied together. So you build the emotion, and you're building one thing on another. Well, the same thing in presenting and in selling. What we're trying to do is build little moments of credibility and little moments of reliability, because every time you see a piece of my content or I pick up the phone to you, you know it's going to be a valuable experience, because every single time in the past, it's been about you and your needs and helping you advance your understanding. It's not been about me pitching my product. So when
I love the phrase, Marcus. I love the phrase, learn what their struggling moments are, which is way better than like, what's their pain? Well, I mean, everybody wants to talk about what their pain are, but what are those moments where they struggle, where they're sitting somewhere and somebody asks them for a piece of data that they don't feel confident in, or somebody asks them how they're going to change the trajectory of whatever demand, and they don't have the answer to that. Like, what are those struggling moments, and how do you help them with those struggling moments is great, because I also think that if you see yourself as a storyteller, you look for struggling moments, you don't look for the pain.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And that makes it interesting. Remember, for the last 250,000 years, our ancestors have been sat around campfires, looking up at the sky, talking about the great emu and other stuff. And it's fascinating. We're creatures.
Pete still does that. Pete still sits around looking at the sky, talking about the great emu.
We're in planning, recovery mode. We thought the year was going to go like this, and it's all about capital preservation. And if the numbers aren't coming in the way you thought they were, are people going to be quicker to pull the trigger? They're going to be risk averse. They're not going to want to sign long-term deals. They're going to want to do short-term deals, freemium. What do you guys think is going to happen? What makes you have one long-term deal, Ferrara, and you have the rest of these things going on? You're not going to sign more than a quarter, are you?
No, I think it's interesting, because I think our budgets are going to be, I think they're going to be much tighter in time frame. So I think what you're going to get is you're going to get people to say, I mean, overall the year, we got to make sure we have a sensible budget, and it's got to end this way. And assuming we spent it all, this is what it should look like at the end of the year. But I really do think it's going to be quarter by quarter decision making. It's pretty uncertain what's going on.
Well, I mean, let me ask you.
Someone wrote something the other day about will inflation hit hard? And I'm like, whoa, it's already hit hard. Like, that train has left the station, right? So what else is going on? Like, let's tick the boxes around what's good and what's bad, and nobody knows. It's something everybody's going to prepare for. You can spend that now, but don't carry it over to the next period. And the next period could be next month, or certainly next quarter.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question, Jason. What is the overall job to be done for the business? What are you all working towards collectively?
Shareholder value.
I think there are two things that we're working toward. One is shareholder value, taking care of our existing customer. If I look at the projects we have planned and the things that we're doing, it really is about take care of that existing customer.
And if you could only focus on one, which one would you focus on?
Well, I think to take care of the existing customer serves the shareholder value. So to me, that's the highest level one, and I think it's the one that, because it's the one that makes us take care of our team the best.
Ah,
right?
now we're making real progress. Okay.
Yeah, because it's like, I want people to be happy. If they're happy working where we're working, then they're going to take care of their customers the best. If they're secure and they feel good and they have opportunity, regardless of what the budget is, if they feel like they have opportunity and latitude in their roles, then they're going to make people feel like positive customers.
Let's pretend shareholders took their rightful place right at the back of the queue. And what we did instead is we put the employees, the customers, and the partners before everybody else.
Yeah.
What would you do differently?
One of the most important things we could do to help our customers is to make sure that the most of our employees that were salespeople felt like they were given the tools they needed to hit their plan. Because Pete, how many employees was that? That was something, that was like freaking 85% of the company or something.
And the upwards, it was about 600-700 people. And, back then you wanted to give them the feeling of control.
Yeah.
They don't need the control. They need to feel like they're in control.
Yeah. So they can go out and win, right? They got to feel confident enough to go out and win or take care of the customer, or like whatever team they're on, they can go out and do those things. And that's, I think, the most important thing you can do in a time like this. Like, look at how do you empower your team?
They have to feel safe that they can have difficult conversations with customers, knowing that they're not going to be punished. They need to know that they can take risks, that they can make decisions. And this is where most people, I think, in their planning will be going in the wrong direction, because they're going to be trying to exercise more control instead of giving more agency. They're going to take away trust instead of giving trust. And by the sounds of things, if you're creating a culture and an environment where people feel taken care of, they're more likely to give discretionary effort. And if they understand the values, the boundaries around which they can behave. So, for example, when I'm working with my clients and with my teams, it's always central is buyer safety. If the buyer does not have cause to feel safe because we in any way behave in an untrustworthy, self-serving, pressurizing manner, they have every right to kick us into touch. And why wouldn't they?
I'll take your shared screen and I'll up you one, Marcus.
Ooh. Oh boy. Do I have to share something with
you're marketing. You're marketing. I think everybody needs to know, okay, the year has started. Okay. I want to see results and I want to see work. The results you show me now are from a sales cycle that happened before.
Yeah. And
generally when everybody starts at a company, they're in the top left quadrant. They're busting their ass. They don't have any results. Then eventually, that deals with onboarding and training. Then they get into, we call it discipline freedom. You're working hard, you're producing results, remove obstacles, let them do what they need to do. Then you need some mechanism to figure out when they go in the bottom right quadrant where the results are coming in, but the work is missing. It may not hit you now, depending on the sales cycle. It may be 6 months down the road, a year down the road. Okay. Then when they get into that bottom left where no work and no results, that's PIP, RIF. It's too soon. It's too late for a PIP to get them back going. They're going to have to go unless there's some type of system in place in your planning that looks something like this. And this could be your leads. This could be your employees. This, whatever it is, you just have to show that you're putting in the work now that will turn into the revenue down the road. And I think a lot of companies right now, I call this no surprises. Okay. If let's just say Jack Welch was what, 10, 20, 70, he would cut the bottom 10%. Everybody needs to know where they are in the bottom 10%.
Well, I think there's a challenge here, which is that we really need to, in our planning, we need to build it backwards from the job that we're all trying to get done, and the individual's role in executing their part towards that job. And Jace, where I was leading to was rather than buying quarter by quarter, if you had a consortium of partners who are really familiar not only with your business, but also with what potentially is out there that you may not be aware of, because they do this every day and that's their job. And you're stuck with your nose to the grindstone, focusing on trying to deal with putting out fires. If you had partners like that, isn't it more likely that you'd be buying through that consortium because there's an ecosystem, that there's a framework, and they're working backwards from your overall 3-year job to be done, rather than coming in and piecemeal buying tech or buying a bit of data or hiring somebody? Have a plan. Have a 3-year plan broken down in 6-month increments. What does the business look like? What customers, how much revenue, how much of that falls to the bottom line? How much do we get to spend of the money we generate? Because that means that we don't have to go out and get funding. Then 6 months back from there, what are the positions that we need in order to make that possible? For that to be possible, what budget needs to be available to hire those people? And then we can start thinking about building a bench. So when we're doing this planning cycle, we're thinking 3 years ahead, and we're working backwards so that this quarter is serving that 3-year goal. Because it's much easier.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But that type of planning needs to have started, in Q3, the beginning of Q3 of the previous period, in order to take effect now. Like if you're doing that now in January, your January
it's not going to happen now.
Screwed, right? It's not going to happen. But then I do agree with you. Like you build that plan, you build it for the long term, and the budget should be laid out like that.
You would hope there's contingencies in place, because
the plan 3 years ago, 3 years ago, today didn't look like today. Today looked a lot rosier than today. So you gotta have contingency plans. And then, I mean, Marcus, the reality is you can build your budget quarter by quarter, and it works until your best rep leaves, or until your churn goes up because you got a big customer that has decided to leave, and now you're like, oh shit, we can't spend that, we can't do it this way, we got to shift it this way. And so that's going to require inter-year shifts. But yes, I mean, like Pete, what you were showing me, and what I just started thinking about was, you got to have an operating system. Your business has to run on an operating system, and there are lots of them. You have to choose one, and you have to plan based on that operating system.
Well, the system, guys, shouldn't it be that you got to know what your number is? We did a poll last week. Half of the people that responded said that they don't think they're going to get their quota by February 1, or this first month of their second month of their fiscal year. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's bad management. It's piss poor leadership, and it's normally driven by people who are indecisive because they're out of their depth. Being a CRO after 3 years as an SDR, you're not anywhere equipped to do that kind of shit. But there are a lot of them in SaaS.
How can you? I've seen it happen at companies I've worked for. I've heard about it for other companies. It's what they're trying to justify the bonuses. They want to make sure there isn't too much overperformance. And okay, I think we can get to the point where we don't have to pay out too much money. It's almost like, I hate to go back to the salary thing, but this pay at risk and bonus thing, if you don't get your number till the second quarter, why the hell would you stay at a company? Half of the respondents said they don't know, they don't believe they'll get their number till February or March.
Well,
I don't understand.
At
How are
least
you
three
supposed to
quarters
hit your
of flight
first
risk.
quarter?
It's insane. But again, this is why planning, and Jason, I absolutely agree with you. You should have done it 2 quarters ago.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, you've got to start somewhere, and now would be the best place. You know, if you can't plant 20 years ago, plant it now. Second. And this is why I think we've got to start thinking longer term, which is why I was so excited when you said, I'm really interested in the people who are passive looking, because that's your medium term pipeline. What I'm teaching all of my clients, and it's working an absolute dream, is fixate on your medium to long-term pipeline. People who are going to buy in maybe 6 months up to 36 months. And really focus on mapping out who the best prospects are and work those smaller number of accounts so that you blitz them in a very short space of time. So let's say you've got 20 target accounts that are your trophy accounts. Work 5 a quarter and try and get 20 to 30 points of contact within each of those accounts, and get referred off each conversation and use each conversation to learn and feed off the next one. So by the time that quarter is over, you've already established a really good network, and you've identified people who are passively looking, and you're looking at people who have a vested interest in the status quo. And then look at who their partners are. Because my favorite way of getting into an organization is to get referred in by 6 people who are already trusted by the buyers. Different points in the buying cycle, different times, different levels. It makes it nigh on impossible for my competition, because by the time there's a consensus, it's very difficult when my competitor speaks to 1.65 buyers and I've got 18 people who know my name, 12 of whom are big advocates, and 3 of them are power.
The money that comes in January, Rule of 72, that's the most valuable money of the year, right? So what is passive? What do you consider passive in the CRM? Is it a drip campaign? It's talking to marketing. Is this somebody that we ran an appointment with and they said, yeah, let me think about it, and then we get the drip going? What do you call passive, Marcus? And how would you campaign to them, Jason?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by passive, because I don't think we're ever passive, are we?
Well, I thought I heard somebody say, and I thought it was you, Marcus, these passive prospects that are coming through that
they're passively looking. So then,
right. How do we harness them? How do we know they're passive? I'm guessing it's a stage in the CRM. And if we can identify the stage, then what is Jason going to do? What's the drip campaign going to look like to get them?
Where are they in the classic buying cycle? If they fit the profile of one of your hero customers, then where are they in that buying cycle? And what struggling moments are they likely to be experiencing at that phase? So how can I preempt? What can I do to turn up and make sure I'm there to hold their hand through the struggling moment? But better still, how can I preempt it? One of my favorite things when I sell to a client is, Pete, in about 3 months' time, I'm going to introduce accountability to the point where people can no longer hide or make excuses without it being glaringly obvious and painful. Now, when we do that, one thing is going to happen. You're going to hear on your door, and people are going to be tapping, saying, Pete, can I have a word? And you'll say yes. And then they'll say, the training, really enjoying it. Marcus is great fun, but he doesn't come from our industry, or he doesn't really understand how difficult it is, or he doesn't understand how our pricing is uncompetitive, or whatever it is. Now, when that happens, what are you going to say to them? And sure as eggs is eggs, on the day we introduce accountability, there's a steady stream of every rep who doesn't want to be held accountable, because it means that they're going to have their feet held to the fire. Yeah. So that then proves I know my shit, because it confirmed. You remember that conversation? Yeah. And I warned them it's going to happen. Okay. So in the same way, we should be preempting objections, for example, because remember, your buyer for 80% of the buying cycle is going to be catastrophizing all this shit that can go wrong and how they will be blamed when they put ink on contract. So how are you building how are you inoculating them to protect them against that?
Well, you're saying how to lower risk for the buyer. Are some companies, I don't want to say the dreaded word discount, but there's got to be something where you have different layers of the product that somebody could use that you won't lose any money on, but at least they can try whatever you're offering and then work their way into it.
Yeah, you got to make it safe. You got to make it safe for somebody. Not to mention, I think most products are overpriced from a rate card perspective anyway. So I don't know how much validity there is in that. You were asking something interesting though, Pete, about the passive lookers, and I want to get into this a little bit because, first of all, I think there is, if you are a company today and you're not engaging already in finding out who those passive lookers are, then you're doing something that is probably a little bit more transaction. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, you can't just stop the transaction and drive for the passive lookers, because you'll have this giant hole in your year where nothing is getting sold because you're trying to figure that out. So there's a transition from one to the other that needs to be made. And it has to be a considered transition because it requires a different motion that requires, and Pete, this is, I mean, I've said this a million times on SAASholes. This is how you and I became to be friends, when we realized how important it is to try something new between sales and marketing requires us to actually have a conversation about trying something new. So talking to those passive lookers is impossible if your marketing team says, give me 20 named accounts, I'll go market to them. When they come through, you'll sell them. That doesn't work. Let's come up together with what the criteria are, how we would choose those people, how we work together, the conversation we have, how we score them, how we qualify them. This is a everyday conversation about that type of sales motion. That may be only a few people who can handle that conversation. The rest of them can crank the transactions all day long. The ones that can handle it work together.
I'm sure you've missed it out deliberately, but the missing link is the CS people. Customer success is speaking to customers 6 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah. Why are they here? We know that.
3 minutes a day. So why the fuck are they not involved? For goodness sake. I mean, grow up.
Yeah, because they know, like when we go choose those 20 or whatever, we want to get some target accounts. How do we know? Well, we would know by, like, who are our most valuable customers? What do they look like? Do we want more of them? Well, we may have a really valuable customer that is a complete pain in the ass. Yeah. We don't actually want more like them. We want more that look like this. Well, what are the characteristics of these? How do we go help find those? And you got to have the CS in that conversation. But Mark, as my example of Pete and I working together, the CS team wasn't what you were talking about at that time. So this really was me and Pete trying to figure it out, and a bunch of other people.
I get it. But the point being that we need, it's a continuum that as far as the customer is concerned, and we need to build everything from the customer out. If we build it from us, then we start ending up sounding like selfish assholes. And the buyers don't like that because they're not interested. They don't care about your quota. They don't care about your shareholders. What they care about is, can you help me solve my problem? You know, it's like, you know, the old lady going into the shop and the rep trying to explain about the heater. And the only question that the old lady wants answered is, will it keep an old lady warm?
Right.
It's as simple as that. And we've got to stop overcomplicating it. We've got to start taming the complexity. I think one of the biggest problems that we see in sales today is that the sales leadership makes everything far more complicated for the salespeople because they're trying to exercise control. What they need to do is give up control and trying to be controlling and focus on the things that actually get you to the outcome that you want, which is helping customers solve their problems.
Which gets us back to do you feel safe and supported, have the tools you need as a seller in that environment? Because the plan helps us do that, and you can't do it unless they feel like they have the space to go really do true discovery. You're just going to get fake discovery, demo, close lost. Fake discovery, demo, close lost. And somebody will bite because they're like, I don't care about the fake discovery. I just want the demo and I'm going to buy. You'll get a few of those.
And they were going to buy anyway. You could have saved yourself.
Yeah, right. Right. You didn't convince them to buy. They were going to buy anyway.
Let's pretend it does A, B, C, D, and E. What happens then? Well, I'd buy it. Great. So do you have a credit card? And then you're done. I mean, it's not rocket science. I know that's simplifying it, but the point being that the whole sales process historically for the last 40 years has been focused around us. It's been focused around making things more efficient, more convenient, more effective for us. And the customer has become a forgotten afterthought at the end of a long chain of abuse. Employees are being asked to do things that they feel deeply uncomfortable about, which is why 3/4 of technology employees have looked for a new job last year. And why 40% now have a side hustle because they don't trust their leadership. That's indicative of something much bigger. We're dealing with a wicked problem here, which is made up of leadership, sales, investors, marketing, customer success, the customer, your channel, your supply chain, and all of these things. And you've got to consider them all.
Well, in 2023, we're talking about planning. If we're looking in the crystal ball, there's going to be more cuts at the bigger companies, and the bigger cut. If you have a bigger company cut or RIF, more people are going to be laid off. So the sales forces are going to shrink. The customer success teams are going to shrink. It's going to be the smaller companies that are used to getting handheld service. Good luck. Go to the website. That's where e-commerce is going to have to come to play to get some type of value of these people that you can't afford to put a sales rep on anymore.
I think intelligent websites are going to replace a lot of salespeople. I think voice is already replacing it. Alexa and Siri do a lot of basic order taking for transactional stuff.
Well, you see this with writing too. I mean, like I can write lots of stuff that I don't actually have to write down. Like I don't have to write it.
So there are plenty of ways that we can be more effective, but we have to ask ourselves, should we? And so when we're asking ourselves about efficiencies and effectiveness in our planning, we also need to caveat it with, and how will it affect the customer? Because if it makes our lives easier, but it creates friction for the buyer, it's going to mean we sell less or customers churn. And so your emphasis on your existing customer, that really interests me, because in terms of planning, what I'm interested in is profit. I want to know that my expansion sales will typically net me about 1,150% profit, whereas a new business sale will generate me 18%, and an upsell will generate me 170%, according to the 2019 BankSAAS survey. So this is an investment bank, effectively, looking at their investments. Mm-hmm. So if you want to have cash that you can spend on hiring, on buying technology, look at how you can get profitable customers. So in your planning, I would strongly recommend you shift your prospecting focus on how do we generate lifetime customers who are very profitable, not how do we hit quota this quarter. Because that changes marketing's focus. It changes the qualification, the pre-qualification. What does an MQL look like now? If you have that kind of thinking cap on.
Yeah. I mean, that does that lends itself to that shift that we were talking about, to finding those passive people, understanding what their struggling moments are, because when that prospect believes that you understand their struggling moments and then buy, they've created a better relationship with your organization anyway during the sales process. But I think that's the one challenge that I feel like the most acutely is when a new customer comes on, do they feel like the company is an advocate of their needs, or do they feel like they just bought something? And that's where the last couple companies I've been involved in, that's been a big topic. Like, when somebody buys, do they feel like we understand them, or was it just a transaction?
How do you get the feedback? Do you do surveys, net promoter scores? Like what? Because if you're going to have less customer service people this year, you're going to need something that says, "Hey, the customer's pissed off." So, what do you guys do?
Yeah. So, I mean, we do net promoter score is our primary mechanism. And I always tell people, like, if you get a net promoter score that you don't like, that should be considered a cry for help by that customer, right? It's not them just saying, "Oh, I'm going to give them a bad rating because I want to give them a bad rating." It's like, no, they want to talk. That's an outreach, right? If they were really that mad, they wouldn't do anything. They want to talk to you. So that's the number one thing we do. The other thing is to make sure that there's, like, we talk a lot about ownership of a client. So there is a CS person assigned to an account. They have to know, hey, that's your assignment. That's you're responsible for this client. But I mean, my day job is demand generation and branding. My side hustle, really, my side hustle is demand generation and branding. My day job is, do you have a client that's a problem? I'll jump in and talk to them. Like, I'm in this position where I can ask a bunch of questions that usually the rep or the CS person can't, because I don't have a quota. I don't have, like, those very immediate, tangible things. I have more of a long-term vision. So my conversation is, okay, I saw a negative NPS come in. The CS person reached out to me. Let me engage. What's going on? What's happening? Like, let's talk. You tell me what's happening, because I want to hear it from them. And we do that. We do a lot of that as a leadership team.
Well, that's incredibly refreshing, because that is quite rare. Let's be honest about it. Very few marketers speak to customers, and very few leaders spend.
Yeah, that just drives me bananas. Oh my God, I this is one of my most passionate things, and the thing I hate the most.
Just put time in the back.
I hate it. Like, I mean, every single company I've ever been to, in a marketing role, going to the sales team, asking, or going to the CS team, whoever it is, asking to talk to a customer. The question is, why do you want to talk to them? Why should I let you do that? And most of the time, I'm like, what? How is that your decision, right? I don't want to be a jerk about it, but I want to talk to him. I'm gonna talk to him. But that is, like, so important, because that's what makes someone feel like they're this really valuable client. And they are. You just talked about how profitable they are. Like, everybody should have a relationship here. You should be building these relationships across the business. I don't know. Well, that's what. Listen, you can get anybody to run a Google AdWords campaign. Don't hire me to do that. But if you want someone who cares about, that customer and their experience, that's what we got to do as leaders in an organization. And we're all leaders in an organization, regardless of the role that we play, right? So we've got to connect with our clients in that way. No, I agree.
No, you're absolutely on the money. But the problem is that so many of our salespeople, our SDRs, don't pick up the phone. A couple of weeks ago, I came across an SDR, and I asked him for something from his phone, and he had to go to his third screen to find his phone app. Now, that's indicative of a big...
we don't make phone calls anymore.
People don't make phone calls, or a lot of people don't make phone calls, because they don't understand the power of whispering right into someone's ear. I mean, they've allowed you into their personal space in such an intimate way on the telephone. People, if I whispered in your ear physically, it would give you the creeps. But they're letting you that close.
Yes, it would, Marcus. Yes, it would.
Even if we had some foreplay.
That's my guy.
I thought that was.
So, gentlemen, and I do use the term loosely. Here we are. It's the new year. You thought, who was it? Mike Tyson? Hey, man, the best laid plans get thrown out the window. You get punched in the face.
Yeah,
So you got a couple of weeks of thinking you're on course. Get ready to make the change. Here's some things that you can look at.
Yeah.
Well,
do the punch in the face around when? The last week of the month?
My advice on this is really simple. Stick to doing the fundamentals. Do the basics well, consistently, over time, and mean it. And that means you got to really understand your customer, who they are, where they are in the buying cycle, and where they are in the life cycle of their own job. Understand them, their motivation, understand their influence, their potential influence on this, and what other vested interests they have. Take your time. This is why Jason's point about focusing on the passive market is really key, because you want to understand what conversations they are having internally. Because as you understand that, if you think about it, it's like being on a night bombing raid and you're at 30,000 feet. The pain within the organization of these little explosions as the bombs explode, and you hear the pop. Okay, but with that height, you've got visibility of all the things that are going on. The only other people who are likely to have that, interestingly enough, are procurement, if they are strategic, data, and the channel, because they're the ones who generally have a very wide-ranging perspective. Everyone else is very blinkered. Okay, so go to those three sources if you want a much bigger picture and understanding the interplay between the different parts. Because when you understand the interplay, then you can start looking upstream for cause. And if you can find a problem at its cause, you can stop the symptoms downstream. And then you've got to plan for what happens when you turn the electricity off when someone's running at full pelt on the treadmill.
People care more about losing money than they do about gaining money. Show them that you can help them not lose money.
Yeah.
Fear of loss versus desire for gain.
Well, this is where cost of inaction is something that you've really got to understand. Because that's how you enter the passive market in a way that they weren't expecting. And that might be the trigger that shifts them from passive to active, because now they're trying to get to grips with what the possibilities are. And then when they're deciding, what they do is they make trade-offs. I can do without the fifth bedroom, but I can't do without the second bathroom. We need access to decent motorways and decent airports. Not that interested in trains. Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, these are all things that when we're making the decision, we're trading off. And what we end up with is what's left. And then on first use, if it doesn't meet the expectations, then we don't really make progress. Then buyer's remorse sets in very quickly. And if it does, then we're looking at ongoing use. And what we really care about then is building the habit, making sure that they're habituated into using what you do use, what you sold them. So how do you get adoption? How do you get consumption? How do you get satisfaction? So the metric I would prefer to look for rather than NPS is time to value. What is the time? What is the value that the customer intended when they invested in our solution? How long does it take to deliver that or exceed it? And when they do achieve it, there is a big, fat, hefty bonus for all the people who contributed to that, and a nice big celebration with the client.
Gentlemen, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Pete. Happy New Year, Marcus.
I cannot think of starting a new year with two better people than you two.
Thank you
It's
so
not my
much.
life.
Nice, Pete. Great to start it with you.
Over
It's been
now.
a joy. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Our show is supported by listeners and viewers just like you. DemandFarm.com. Unlock key account growth with Demand Farm's large deal, key account, and relationship intelligence products. Go to DemandFarm.com now to schedule a demo. Ask for Iron Man. Brent Keltner's Winalytics Revenue Acceleration Playbook Masterclass. In 5 hours over 5 weeks, help your sales and go-to-market team build the mindset and skills for a new buyer environment. Kickoff and product-driven selling versus authentic conversations for all go-to-market teams. Team-level sessions for self-assessment and team dialogue. All go-to-market team wrap-up to identify top go-to-market strategy adjustments. Go to Winalytics.com now.